In this video, we'll discuss how to name and write formulas for ionic compounds. Ionic compounds are chemical compounds composed of ions, cations that are positive, bonded to anions which are negative. The attraction is due to the difference in charge of the ions. Despite the fact that you have positives and negatives in the compound, the overall charge of the compound itself is zero. And then when you write the formula or the name for the compound, you list the cation first and then the anion, like in this example. Magnesium is the cation, chloride is the anion. Magnesium, cation, chloride, anion. These can also be referred to as formula units. This is the lowest whole number ratio of ions in the compound. Ionic compounds are basically crystals. And so it's not like molecular compounds where you have molecules floating around separate from each other. These, you have ions bonded in a repeating pattern of cation, anion, cation, anion, and in different ratios. Now, when you're writing the formulas, it's helpful to remember the charges of ions. Now, not all ionic compounds consist of these main group elements. Some of them have transition metals, and then some of them have polyatomic ions. But the other two examples, transition metals and polyatomic ions, we'll talk about later. The first step for writing ionic compounds is look at the name. Does this consist of a metal and a nonmetal? And if so, this is an ionic compound. But if it's nonmetal and nonmetal, it's a molecular compound. So if it's an ionic compound, you write the formula and charge of the cation next to the formula and charge of the anion. And you'll use these charges to write the formula. There's a trick. It's called swap and drop. So basically all you're doing is taking the number of the cation and you're swapping and dropping that number to the anion. So we move the number over to the anion, but we drop it down to the subscript, because remember, the subscript represents the number of atoms in the formula. Then we do the same thing with the anion. We take the charge, just the number. We don't care about the charge. We don't care about the positive. We don't care about the negative. We only look at the number. And we write that 2 down here with the cation. You swap it to the other ion, and then you drop it to the subscript. And then you make sure that you write it nice and neat, Al2S3. That means 2 aluminums, 3 sulfides. Now, if you think about it, does this equal 0? Remember, each aluminum is positive 3, so if there's 2 of them, positive 3 plus positive 3 is positive 6. If you have 3 sulfides, each sulfide is negative 2. Negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. That gives you negative 6. So 6 minus 6 equals 0. So swap and drop is just a trick that you can use to help you write the formula. And another way to do it is just look at the ions and do the math and say, okay, when I combine this ratio of ions, is the charge 0? Whichever method you prefer, that's up to you. But I think most kids just prefer to go ahead and swap and drop. All right, hopefully that helps.